The ballroom lights were down to half, and my nephew was 3 sentences into thanking people who hadn't done half of what I'd done for him. I stood at the back of the room in a suit nobody there had ever seen me wear. Manila folder under my arm. Unopened. I want you to hold on to something before we go any further. For about 4 months, my nephew walked past me 9 times a week and never once looked at my face. Tonight, he was about to thank me for it, without knowing it was me he was thanking. There's a mop and bucket closet 3 doors down from this ballroom. I know exactly where the light switch sticks. I know the carpet cleaner smell on the 3rd floor, and which conference room door doesn't quite latch. My nephew never learned any of that about the building he does business in. I learned all of it about him. Jenna was filming from a table near the stage, phone held sideways, catching every word for later. Nobody in that room had turned around once, all night, until they had a reason to. They were about to get one. But let me back up. 4 months ago, none of this had a name yet. I just knew my granddaughter's shoes didn't fit. Welcome to channel name. Get settled, because this one is going to take you somewhere. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. Trust me, you're going to love it here. My name is Earl Whitfield. I'm 63 years old. For 31 years I worked the line at Richmond International, turning wrenches on 737s until my back finally told me it was done. I'm not telling you that to impress you. I'm telling you because it matters later. Every single bit of it matters later. I'm up every morning at 4:45. Have been since 1989. Not because I have anywhere to be anymore, my back made sure of that, but because some habits outlive their reasons, and I've decided that's fine. I use the extra hours the way most retired men waste a Saturday. Every spring I change the oil in 3 widows' cars on my street, free of charge, because their husbands used to and somebody should. I've sponsored the youth baseball team's uniforms for 6 years running. I've never once shown up to a game on purpose. A grown man standing behind a fence watching other people's kids makes everybody uncomfortable, including me. Every other Sunday I drive 40 minutes to sit in a church pew that used to be mine, and isn't anymore. It's Travis and Jenna's pew now. I sit near the back, for my granddaughter. Most Sundays that aren't church Sundays, an old friend named Raleigh Bishop calls just to complain about his knees. I complain back about mine. That's the whole friendship. 24 years running out of the same hangar, and it's enough. I should tell you about Lily. She's 8. My daughter Dana's girl. Dana died 2 years ago, a car accident, and I'm not going to walk you through the details, because some rooms you don't open for company. What I will tell you is this: when it came time to decide who'd raise that little girl, I told the family court I was 61 and alone. I didn't think that was fair to a child. Guardianship went to Travis and Jenna. I asked for that. Nobody took her from me. Along with Lily came her survivor benefit, $1,450 a month, set up through my daughter's account back before anybody thought it would ever need to be used. I signed off on it going into a Guardian account managed by Travis and Jenna, same as I signed off on everything else that year. It never once occurred to me to check on it. I want you to sit with that for a second, because I've had 2 years to. I've had 2 years to wonder whether that decision was decency, or just fear wearing decency's coat. Here's one more thing you need to see before we go on. The year my sister died, I took in her boy. Travis was 7, scared, and didn't say 6 words to me his first month in my house. I built him an airplane out of scrap aluminum from the hangar. Riveted it myself, wingspan about a foot, painted it the same blue as the tail fins I worked on all week. It was the only way I knew to tell a silent 7-year-old that somebody was staying. That airplane sat on Travis's shelf for years. Last I saw it, it still had my rivets in it. Remember that. I owned exactly 2 suits for most of my adult life. One's for weddings. The other's for whatever this turns out to be. Retirement made me restless, so about a year ago I took a part-time job pushing a mop at an office park called Westgate, 3 mornings a week. My knees complain about it. My ears work fine. Nobody at Westgate looks twice at a man in coveralls with a name patch. I've found that's true of most places, if you're patient enough to notice it. Travis's company rents space at Westgate. I didn't take the job for that reason. I want to be honest about that, because honesty is the only currency I've got left that's worth anything. I took it because I was bored, and a man needs somewhere to put his hands. It just so happened his office was on my hallway. For a long time, that felt like nothing more than a coincidence I mentioned to nobody, not even Raleigh. A man in coveralls, pushing a mop past a glass door 3 mornings a week, is about as invisible as a person gets in this country. I'm not bitter about that. I noticed it, and I filed it away, the way I file most things away. I thought giving Lily to Travis was the last hard decision I'd ever have to make about that little girl. I was wrong about the order of things. It was only the first. It was a Tuesday in January. 3:15 in the afternoon. Tuesdays are mine and Lily's. Standing appointment, ice cream after school, rain or shine. Travis lets it happen because it's free babysitting, and I've never once minded being useful for that reason. I picked her up at the curb like always. Her sneakers were canvas. Thin. A size too small, soaked clean through from the slush. Richmond gets cold enough in January to freeze a puddle solid by 4 o'clock. I looked at her feet and did the arithmetic a mechanic does without meaning to. How many months a growing girl's shoes last? How many months since I'd last bought her a pair myself, back when nobody minded me buying things? I didn't say anything about the sneakers. Not yet. I bought her the ice cream, chocolate, same as always, same as her mother used to get, and watched her reach for a napkin. Her sleeve rode up. There was a bruise on her forearm, yellow-green, already fading. "What happened there, sweet pea?" I asked her. "Jim," she said. Too fast. Too smooth for an 8-year-old. I didn't push it. I filed it away, the way I file most things. That evening, on my way home, I stopped by Travis and Jenna's, a habit, nothing that should have raised anybody's guard. There was a boat in the driveway when I pulled up. A new base boat, backed onto a trailer, dealer tags still zip-tied to the hitch. I counted them without meaning to. 3 tags. Inside, walking Lily to the door, I passed the kitchen. The pantry had a padlock on it. Small. Brass. Cheap and deliberate, the kind you buy on purpose, not the kind that comes with anything. Jenna was at the counter, back to me, wiping down something that didn't need wiping. She didn't turn around either. I've noticed that about her. She has a talent for being in a room without ever quite being in it. I want you to picture that padlock for a second, because I did, the whole drive home. Travis was in the garage unloading fishing gear off the new boat when I asked him, careful as I could make it, about the sneakers. He didn't even set down what he was carrying. "She eats what the budget allows, Earl," he said. "You raised me broke, look how I turned out." You raised me broke. I stood there a second and let that sentence finish landing. 31 years of listening to men talk over the sound of a running engine teaches you something. Which words are the engine, and which words are just noise somebody's making to cover for it. That sentence was noise. "How much was the boat?" I asked. "Don't start," he said, which wasn't an answer. "Is that right?" I said. He kept talking, about the business doing well, about how a man's entitled to enjoy some of what he built. About how Lily has plenty, and plenty is relative, and I was one to talk, living the way I do on a mechanic's pension. I let him talk. I've found people tell you the most when they think silence means agreement. "Noted," I said, when he finally ran out of road. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask about the padlock. I said goodnight to Lily through the screen door, told her Tuesday same as always, and walked back to my truck past the boat and its 3 dealer tags. Here's what I need you to understand about how I'm built. I spent 31 years listening to jet engines for the one sound that doesn't belong. It's never a bang. It's a change in pitch so small most men walk right past it without hearing a thing. Standing in that driveway, I heard it. Not in the engine. In my own chest. Not anger. A change in pitch. I sat in the truck for a minute before I started it. Didn't turn the radio on. Didn't call anybody. By the time I pulled out of that driveway, I'd already decided 3 things I was going to do. Exactly 0 of them involved raising my voice, ever, at any point, for the rest of this. He can call it broke if he wants to. I call it paid for. 2 mornings later, I was mopping the 3rd-floor hallway at Westgate when I heard my nephew's voice through a conference room door that wasn't quite shut. I've known that voice my whole adult life. He's never once turned toward it when it's coming out of a man in coveralls. Guardian money pays for the boat, baby. He was telling somebody, a supplier rep, from the sound of the pitch that followed. Kid barely knows the difference. I didn't stop mopping. I want you to understand that, because I think it matters. I didn't drop the mop, didn't freeze, didn't do anything a man watching me would have noticed. I finished that hallway exactly the way I finish every hallway. 31 years on a tarmac teaches a man how to keep working with bad news in his ears. You don't set the wrench down. You don't let your face change. You finish the torque sequence, log it, and only then do you let yourself feel whatever's waiting for you. I finished the hallway. I logged nothing, because there was nothing to log yet. Then I went home and sat at my kitchen table for a long time without turning on a light. If you've been listening for a while, do us one quick favor. Subscribe. It costs you nothing and it means everything to us. Hit the like button while you're at it, and drop your thoughts in the comments. I called Raleigh Bishop that night. 24 years in the same hangar teaches you who you call when something's cracked and you don't yet know how bad. You gonna tell me what we're fixing? He said. Or am I just handing you wrenches? Wrenches for now, I told him. He didn't ask again. He drove over the next morning with a thermos of coffee and sat across my kitchen table while I told him what I'd heard through that conference room door. Raleigh's a quiet man. He listened the whole way through without interrupting once, which is rarer in a friend than people think. What Raleigh was good for wasn't advice. It was patience, and a second pair of hands going through a filing cabinet I hadn't opened in years. You're not much of a talker when something's wrong, he said around midnight, both of us elbow-deep in folders that smelled like a closet. Neither am I. Good thing we're not here to talk. We found it on the second night. Back in 2019, when Travis started Whitfield Air and Heat, I put up $40,000 to get him off the ground. I remember signing the papers at my kitchen table, remember my attorney at the time, a careful woman, long retired now, insisting on 2 things I barely paid attention to. Quarterly book access rights. An acceleration clause, triggered by any misuse of family funds. I'd forgotten both existed. Raleigh found them before I did, reading over my shoulder with his glasses pushed up on his forehead. Earl, he said, you wrote yourself a key. You just never used the door. I sat with that a minute. I remembered why I'd let my attorney talk me into those clauses in the first place. It wasn't because I distrusted Travis, not back then. It was because 31 years of inspecting other men's work had taught me that trust and verification aren't opposites. A bolt can be torqued right and still shear later. You check it anyway. Not because you expect it to fail. Because checking costs you nothing and finding out too late costs you everything. I called the union hall the next day and asked my old rep if he knew a good family attorney. He gave me a name, Nora Fitch. I met her Thursday morning with the loan agreement in one hand. And for the first time out loud to anyone but Raleigh, I told her what I'd heard through that conference room door. Nora read the agreement twice before she said a word. Earl, she said, this book access clause isn't decoration. Most people write clauses like this and never once use them. You can actually open these books. I asked her what that meant, practically. It means, she said, we can formally request the Guardian account records, cross them against your loan, and see exactly where every dollar went. Legally. No guessing. She asked for 2 weeks. I asked her, before I left her office, what happens to a man who writes himself a key like that and never has to use it? Nora didn't answer right away. Most people don't, she said. That's usually the whole point of a clause like this. It sits in a drawer for 20 years, doing nothing but making everyone a little more honest just by existing. You're the first client I've had in a decade who's actually opening the drawer. 2 weeks turned into 10 days, because once Nora starts pulling a thread, she doesn't set it down. What came back wasn't a bad month. It wasn't a man cutting corners because a base boat came up cheap at the wrong time. It was $23,800. Diverted from Lily's Guardian account over roughly a year, in pieces small enough that nobody auditing casually would ever add them up. Part of it was the boat's down payment. Part of it was a tanning salon membership in Jenna's name, paid monthly, automatic. And part of it made Nora go quiet reading her own printout. A boat dealer credit application, filed under Travis's name, that listed the Guardian account as a qualifying asset. Not spent from it. Used as collateral for it, in writing, to a licensed lender who had no idea whose name was actually on that money. Nora walked me through it line by line, the way you'd walk a customer through a repair estimate they didn't want to hear. A full year of statements. Small withdrawals, mostly, never the same amount twice, spaced out enough that nobody skimming a bank app would ever add them into a single number. Somebody had. Somebody had added every one of them, on purpose, and it still came to $23,800. I sat in Nora's office a long moment before I said anything. I thought about the shoes. I thought about the padlock on a pantry, brass and cheap and deliberate, guarding food from an 8-year-old while a boat sat outside with the tags still on. I've fixed a lot of things that were broken by accident in my life. This wasn't that. This was broken on purpose, one small withdrawal at a time, by somebody who knew exactly what he was doing and did it anyway. I'd thought I was looking at a man cutting corners to get by. I was looking at a man who'd found a bank account with a little girl's name on it and decided that was close enough to his own. The next 9 days I did the kind of work nobody sees and nobody thanks you for. I kept documenting from the mop closet, dates, times, what I overheard, nothing recorded, nothing taken that wasn't already sitting in plain sight for anybody with eyes and a mop. I've always trusted a written date over a remembered feeling. Feelings drift. A date sits still. I kept the notes in the same spiral notebook I used to log torque values on the line. Old habits don't ask permission. They just show up when you need them. 3 lines a day, most days. A time. A room. A handful of words, nothing embellished. Denny Osei, the facilities supervisor who signed my timesheets, asked me once why a janitor needed a notebook. I told him I liked keeping track of things. He laughed and said that made one of us. Nora formalized the audit under the loan agreement's book access clause, and the full accounting came back itemized. Every withdrawal dated. Every one tied to a specific line, the boat's down payment, the tanning membership, 3 restaurant charges the size of a car payment. $23,800, no longer an estimate. A ledger. I read that ledger the way I used to read a maintenance log, front to back twice, looking for the entry that didn't belong. There wasn't one entry that didn't belong. That was the trouble with it. Every single line belonged, in the sense that somebody had decided, on purpose, that it did. A maintenance log tells you when something failed. This told me something worse. It told me nothing had failed at all. Every withdrawal had cleared, every payment had gone through clean, every system had worked exactly the way it was built to work. The only thing wrong with any of it was who'd built it, and why. She prepared 2 more instruments alongside it. A demand accelerating the $40,000 note, per its own misuse of family funds clause, due in full. And a guardianship modification petition for Lily, with the audit and her overdue pediatric dental record attached as exhibits. Once I file this, Nora told me, it becomes part of the court record. Public, if anyone goes looking. Let them look, I said. 2 days after that conversation, Travis called me. Warm as anything, the way he used to sound as a boy asking to borrow the truck. Earl, I'm up for Young Businessman of the Year. Chamber banquet, Saturday after next. You raised me, seemed right you should be there, as my guest. I said yes before he finished the sentence. He had no idea the audit was already 3 weeks old by then. He had no idea I'd spent the last 2 of those weeks mopping past his office door with a folder of his own numbers sitting in my truck. 4 days later, at the mop closet on my lunch break, I saw the post. Jenna had put up a family photo, the boat in the background, Lily's face turned half away from the camera, captioned, "Grateful for the sacrifices that got us here." I want you to sit with that caption for a second, the way I had to, standing in a supply closet with a sandwich I stopped eating. Sacrifices. I've made a few in my life. Raised a scared 7-year-old boy on a mechanic's schedule. Buried a wife. Told the family court I was too old for a little girl I'd have given both my hands for. I know what the word costs when it's real. I stood in that closet a long time working out how it landed on a caption about a boat. Corinne would have known exactly what to say about that caption. She had a gift for cutting through a sentence to whatever was actually holding it up. I don't have that gift. What I have is patience, and a folder that was getting heavier by the week, and 9 days left before a stage in a ballroom downtown. Nora called that same week with something she'd found while pulling records for the petition. The tanning salon membership, the one paid automatic out of Lily's account, was billed, on the company's own books, under the name Lily W. A business write-off. Jenna hadn't just spent the girl's money. She'd used the girl's name to deduct it. "That's not sloppy bookkeeping, Earl," Nora said. "That's a choice somebody made on purpose, more than once, filing after filing." I asked her what that meant for Jenna specifically, separate from Travis. Nora was careful with her answer, the way good attorneys are careful with anything that isn't nailed down yet. "It means she's not just standing next to this," she said. "She's in it." The second thing Nora found, she almost didn't mention, because it wasn't evidence of anything criminal. While researching Travis's businesses for the petition, she'd pulled the Chamber's award nomination packet, public record, sitting right there for anyone who asked. Underscoring criteria, one line read, "Family stability and community sacrifice." The same 2 words Jenna had used in her caption. I don't know if that's irony or just how small a town's vocabulary gets when everybody's trying to sound like everybody else. Either way, I noticed it, and I filed it away, the way I file most things. Raleigh, when I told him, just shook his head. "Man writes the word sacrifice into an award application the same month he's stealing from an 8-year-old, he said. "Some people don't even hear themselves anymore." The clock, by then, had a shape to it. Nora confirmed the guardianship petition and the audit findings would land in the public court record by the Thursday before the Saturday banquet. That meant anyone doing even the most basic homework on an award finalist, including chamber staff running a routine background check, would find it sitting right there. I didn't call anyone at the chamber. I didn't need to. I had the suit I hadn't worn since my wife's funeral cleaned and pressed. And I told Raleigh he was coming with me Saturday, whether he liked banquets or not. "I don't like banquets," he said. "Wear the tie anyway," I told him. He showed up Saturday morning to help me steam the suit. Neither of us knew how to do it properly, and we scorched one sleeve a little in the process. Neither of us mentioned it again. Some things you let go because the alternative is admitting how nervous you both are. 9 days. That's how long it took, start to finish, to turn a mop and a filing cabinet into something a courtroom would recognize as a case. I didn't raise my voice once through any of it. Not to Travis. Not to Jenna. Not even to myself, alone in that truck, reading a caption I still hadn't stopped thinking about. Saturday evening, the Marriott Ballroom downtown, the same room I told you about at the start of this. Roughly 200 guests, round tables, a chamber banner over the stage. Raleigh sat beside me in a rented tie he'd complained about the whole drive over. Jenna sat up front with her phone already out. Travis was called up around 8:15. Young Businessman of the Year. He walked to that podium the way he's walked through most of his life. Certain, easy, already halfway to the next thing before he's finished the thing in front of him. The chandelier light caught the gold foil on the banner behind him. A waiter 2 tables over kept refilling water glasses, unaware anything unusual was about to happen. Jenna's phone camera stayed up the whole time, angled just right to catch him from his best side. He thanked his team. He thanked Jenna. The backbone of everything. He thanked, without using a name, an uncle who took me in and never once asked for anything back. A few people near me turned to see who that might be. I didn't move. I'd heard versions of that speech before, growing up in the same house as him. Travis always did know how to make a room feel something before he'd earned it. I used to think that was a gift. Standing there that night, I understood it was just a habit, same as any other. The kind you can point in either direction, toward good, or away from it. Nobody watching can tell which one you've chosen until later. Raleigh leaned toward me, low enough that only I heard it. "Here we go," he said. He wasn't talking about the speech. That's when Chamber President Alan Whitcomb stepped up beside him. "One point of order," Whitcomb said, "before we finalize this award." He held a single sheet of paper. He didn't raise his voice, and he didn't editorialize. Chamber presidents don't get to keep their jobs by editorializing in front of 200 donors. He read it plainly, the way you'd read a weather report. I found out later his staff had run the routine background check every finalist gets, same as every year. The guardianship filing had come back Thursday morning, right on schedule, right where Nora said it would. The honoree was currently the subject of an active guardianship modification petition, and a restitution finding of $23,800, involving the survivor benefits of a minor child. It was the same figure Nora had traced through a full year of statements, down to the dollar. The room went quiet in a way a room only goes quiet once. Somewhere behind me, a fork touched a plate, and nobody picked it back up. A board member in a navy jacket, 3 seats down from the stage, looked down at his own hands like he'd never seen them before. I watched Travis's face work through something close to static. Confusion first. Then the particular kind of fear that shows up a half-second before a man understands exactly what's happening to him. He searched the crowd. I don't know what he was looking for. I know what he found. Me, standing at the back, in the suit, the folder finally open in my hands. Whitcomb didn't wait for a rebuttal. "The nomination is rescinded," he said. "Pending resolution." He set the plaque face down on the podium and stepped back, and that was the whole speech he gave about it. No further comment. Chamber presidents are efficient people. 200 conversations tried to start at once and none of them quite managed it. That's the sound a room makes when it doesn't know yet whether to whisper or stare. I didn't go up to the stage. I want you to understand that about me. I never once raised my voice in that ballroom, and I never once needed a microphone. I walked to Travis's table instead, where he was still standing, still holding a half-folded thank you card he'd never get to read out loud. "You walked past me 9 times, I said. He didn't answer. I don't think he had one yet. "I counted every one," I said. Jenna had lowered her phone by then. I noticed that, the way I notice most things. I set the folder down on the white tablecloth, closed, right where his empty award should have gone. "The mop was for the floor," I said. "The folder's for you." Nobody at that table said another word. I turned around and walked toward the coat check. Raleigh was already there waiting, exactly where I knew he'd be, my coat already off the rack and folded over his arm. "You didn't need to say more than that," he said. "Didn't have more than that to say," I told him. Behind us, somewhere in that ballroom, 200 people were still trying to decide what they'd just watched. Travis called 19 times that weekend. I counted, same as I count most things. I didn't pick up once. There wasn't anything left to say on a phone that couldn't be said better through Nora, and I'd already said the only 3 lines that mattered, standing at his table. Here's what 30 seconds of paperwork can undo. The $40,000 note Travis signed back in 2019, the one that funded Whitfield Air and Heat, came due in full within 30 days. His own signature put that clause there. Nobody forced his hand twice. The $23,800 he'd diverted from Lily's survivor benefit went back into her account, every dollar, on a payment schedule Nora built with interest attached. Guardianship of Lily, and the $1,450 a month that comes with her, transferred to me 6 weeks later. The judge asked one question at that hearing. "Can you handle it, Mr. Whitfield?" I answered in 4 words. "Same as I always have." The Chamber's write-up of what happened at that banquet made the local business section by Monday. Whitfield Air and Heat lost 3 commercial contracts inside a month. Nobody had to lift a finger for that part. Reputation does its own math once the numbers are public. The base boat went back to the dealer who financed it, once the collateral claim fell apart. It sold at auction for $6,000 less than Travis paid for it. I gave my 2 weeks' notice at Westgate the following Monday. Denny Osei didn't say much when I turned it in. He just shook my hand and told me the 3rd floor wouldn't be the same without me. I told him some jobs finish themselves, once the floor's actually clean. I want you to sit with these 2 numbers side by side, because I did, more than once. Travis diverted about $23,800 over the better part of a year. Diverting it cost him a $40,000 note called due. It cost him every one of those $23,800, repaid with interest. It cost him a little girl and her monthly check, a stage he stood on for 11 seconds, and a boat he owned for about 4 months. He traded a lot of boat for very little water. None of that is the part one actually think about. The part one think about is a Saturday 6 weeks later, in my garage. I had a fresh sheet of scrap aluminum out, and a rivet gun that still fit my hand the way it did in 1999. Lily picked the color herself. "Candy apple red," she said twice, in case I didn't hear her the first time. I built her a second airplane, smaller than the first, wings about 8 inches instead of 12, and I got the proportions right on the first try. Some things don't leave your hands, even after 20 years. She held it up to the garage light for a long moment before she said anything. Then she asked if it could really fly, the way the big ones do. I told her the honest answer. No, it couldn't. It was just aluminum and rivets and a little paint. She said that was fine. She liked it better sitting still where she could see it. She keeps both airplanes on her windowsill now. The new red one, and the original, which came back to me in a box of Travis's old things, shipped over by Jenna without a note attached. 27 years ago I built the first one to tell a scared 7-year-old that somebody was staying. I didn't know back then that I'd end up needing to say the same thing twice, to 2 different kids, with the same pair of hands. I check on those 2 airplanes most mornings, same time I always get up. 4:45. Some habits you keep because they've earned the right to stay. A man who torques bolts for a living knows exactly when something's about to shear. You feel it before you hear it, a change in the give. I felt it in my own family 2 years before I had a number to put on it. You can paint over corrosion. It keeps eating underneath. I'd rather find the rust early and cut it out clean than admire a fresh coat of paint on something already gone soft. If you enjoyed this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories. I will see you on the next one.